Welcome to day 7 of the Radiance Reboot 21-day Quantum Glow. I am your guide, Amy Wall. I'm here to help you turn your light on. I'm here to help you experience age freedom, no matter how old you are or whatever you've got going on. I'm here to help you live in a beautiful now moment, feeling as tuned in, as tapped in, and as turned on as humanly possible, because there is so much possible for us lovely humans. So day 7 means that we have come up to our first week, and we have 2 more weeks left. So I can't even imagine what else is possible for us. And maybe I should start imagining that. And I invite you to also start imagining it. So what else is possible when we end this 21 days? And whether you're just popping in and out or whether you're following along with the whole 21 days, it doesn't really matter, because the transformation is there for you when you choose. So if you're watching this in my Facebook group or on YouTube, please do consider becoming a member of the Beauty Magic Club. That helps support my great work in the world and helps pay for the back end stuff like the software and the virtual assistant and all of the things that go into producing videos like this, and will allow me to produce a better quality of video. You also get special access to my members only products, the full entire Radiance Reboot with the workbook and all of the resources, shopping lists, special playlists, music playlists, and so much more. So the journey we've been on up until today has been a little bit of looking back, a little bit of choosing where we're going, and just exploring some of these principles like beauty isn't pain, which really ties into today's topic beautifully. Today's topic is rewriting your beauty narrative. So today we're going to dive into the beauty stories you might be holding in your very cells. And personally, I have an interest in epigenetics, the biology of belief, how the stories that our mother and our grandmother and so on and so forth, the lineage of women, how those stories are still affecting us today. And we will also take a little bit of a dive into epigenetics during this journey. But today, let's just keep it really short and sweet. You can use your journal. You can use a journal. You can use the sacred skin journal that you have in your members area, or you can just use a piece of paper, or you can just think about it. But remember that words are incredibly powerful codes. Your word is your wand. That's why they call it spelling. And in order to really take advantage of the power of a word, it is vital that we take these words out of our head and, the etheric dimension, either speak them out loud, put them in a second dimension, or put them on paper and really put them in that third dimension. Now, if we are writing painful beauty stories, you might decide to burn that piece of paper symbolically. You might decide to let go of your beauty story. And if you write it all out and it feels really painful, take a moment to really feel the pain. This is not about bypassing pain. This is not a spiritual bypass program. This is the spiritual and energetic energy program. So let's not bypass our actual feelings, but let's take all the time we need to sit with them, witness them, take a look forwards and backwards to see how they could be possibly affecting us in this current day, and then make the choice to write a new story. Does that sound good? All right. So everybody has a beauty story. In fact, one of the things I used to say in my skincare business, and I always say care with a little funny look, because I don't use the word care in my day-to-day life. The only reason I use it in this context is so you know what I'm talking about. But in my world, care means stress, worry, and grief. And it is a spell that the mainstream has inserted in there. And it doesn't really mean nurturing like they are trying to sell it to us. There's an active definition in the dictionary that means worry, stress, or grief. That's why they say things like carefree and you don't have a care in the world. So I am carefree and I don't have a care in the world. But for all intents and purposes, I'm still a skincare expert, and we can say care once in a while so you know what the heck I'm talking about. But back in my day as an award-winning skincare expert, one of the things I used to always say is your skin tells a story. Together, let's make it a beautiful one. So what stories is your skin telling? What story about yourself and beauty is your body telling? What stories do you tell yourself about beauty? So definitely, if you're in the live chat here in my Facebook group, the Quantum Glow Collective, let's start sharing. There's a reason why I'm going live in a very intimate small group so that I can support you, and then I can witness you, and we can witness each other, and then I can facilitate all of us letting it go. So I'll definitely do a little energetic release at the end because this can feel uncomfortable, but let's just follow some golden threads and see where this takes us. Now, I was reflecting about my own story, my own stories, because this isn't just one narrative. There are many narratives woven in that we have picked up throughout our life. Up until the age of about 7 years old, we are in this beautiful, programmable, childlike state, right? Well, we're just taking in all of this information. And I think it goes up beyond 7 years old, but that's the scientific narrative, right? And some of these stories that I picked up when I was very little. And a couple of the stories that I personally picked up, I wanted to share with you. So I can remember being very little and my grandmother telling me that good girls didn't get their ears pierced. Okay, so that was a story that my grandma told me. I can remember being a little girl at the time and thinking that I questioned her, and I decided not to take the story on. Probably because the narrative of the culture was so much different, right? And I had hippie parents, and there was lots of jewelry happening and embellishments, and my mom had earrings. So I can remember her trying to tell me this story and see if I would go along with her story. And I remember specifically thinking to myself, I don't think I'm going to go with that. That sounds like an old story. So that's one example. You might have something like that in your life as well, where somebody in your family or close circle of influence tried to tell and sell a story. Now let's think about the whole entire anti-aging mainstream beauty complex. It is all built on a story that you are losing value with age, and that wrinkles and dark spots and any patina that your skin might be experiencing and developing is a sign of you losing value as a woman. That's the story. That's the through line, right? That is behind all of it. So, when I see companies selling us and telling us that we need products because of, to get rid of wrinkles, it really agitates me, to be honest, because it's an old story, and that story really needs to die because it's not true. You could be absolutely radiant and beautiful, and you could have all of the wrinkles in the world. The wrinkles don't have anything to do with beauty. So that's one story I personally have completely let go of. Now, I don't have a lot of wrinkles because of the way that I do my cellular and spiritual energy as a byproduct. I don't have a lot of deep wrinkles, but I certainly have crepiness and, lots of eye wrinkles, but I don't even use that as a measure of my worth or my beauty anymore. And it's just sort of interesting that, the curious paradox, as Carl Rogers, famed American psychologist, said, the curious paradox is that when I accept myself, then I change. So that's another example of a beauty story that is extremely pernicious, extremely deep, extremely pushed upon us by all areas. The other beauty story that we've already talked about a little bit earlier in this journey is that beauty is pain, right? We need to wound the skin in order to get it to regenerate itself. That is a story. It is a wrong story. It does work short term. You certainly can get a big result if you wound your skin, but ultimately you're creating inflammation, and there is a price to pay. The piper will be paid. So, I was inviting you to a new story that beauty is pleasure. And for this whole entire journey, I will be selling and telling a new story to you that beauty is pleasure. I'll be telling and selling a bunch of new stories to you, and it's up to you to take yourself off automatic, to listen to what I'm saying, to respond to it, take what works, and to leave the rest. Because again, these are just my stories. When I was around 11 years old, my mom and dad were going through another level of their breakup. They had always kind of been on and off since I was about 3, but always really good friends as well, and partners. But I remember about 11, they were really deciding to call it quits. And I was sitting with my dad in his truck in his parking lot, and he was telling me another story about earrings. Okay, this is kind of funny. And I just actually remembered it while I was reviewing for today's class. And his story that he told me was that wearing earrings, if you wore the wrong kind of earrings, you could develop something he called cauliflower ears. And I remember being 11 years old and just thinking, what in the world is he talking about? Um, but I can tell you what he was talking about was that if you wear really heavy earrings, then your ear hole starts to drag, and something, I guess it gets bumpy in your earlobe. What he was doing when he was criticizing my mother and telling me that she had cauliflower ears because of her heavy earrings she was wearing. But I'll never forget that. And I have to say, throughout my entire life, I have looked at the earrings that I've worn and made sure they were not too heavy because of this little virusy story that my dad told me about cauliflower ears. I can remember being, I want to say, 9 years old and coming back from my Girl Scouts meeting and I was sitting in the back of my mom's car, and it must have had something to do with what we were talking about at the Girl Scout meeting. But I can remember thinking that I was over 100 pounds, and that meant something was terribly wrong with me. So something had happened at the Girl Scout meeting. I was sitting in the back getting picked up by my mother, and I remember I can recall this memory as clear as day, that being over 100 pounds was the absolute worst thing that could have ever happened to me. So that began a weight story with me. I had a very glamorous and beautiful grandmother. Um, she did try to insert a few stories, but she inserted some other healthy stories for me around beauty being elegance, beauty being balance. She was also an interior designer, so she was really the one who told me a story about beauty being so much more than what we looked like, but was around everything around you. So that's another example of a story. But I want to turn it over to you, dear viewer, and have you just take a moment and think about what are some of the beauty stories that you were told and sold growing up, and maybe even just through the culture. We all have a story when we were in high school, right? A story around being absolutely hideous in some way. I don't know any woman. I've worked with thousands of women in my 20 plus aesthetics career, and I never met one person, one woman who came out of high school without feeling like there was something terribly wrong with her while she was in school. Something, her nose too big, her butt too big, not having the right amount of clothes. I was actually raised up to be I was raised up. I thought that we were extremely poor. Come to find out, we really weren't, but there was an extreme poverty consciousness happening in my family. And that had something to do with sustainability, and I can go into that at a later point. But I had two pairs of pants in the sixth grade. And I remember going to school in the seventh grade, and a kid came up to me and he said, "Are you that girl that wore the same pair of pants every single day last year?" And that was a story around not being good enough because I didn't have the right clothes. I could go on and on and on. We all have a multitude of stories that act as a kaleidoscope, and we haven't gotten into it yet. And I will touch on it before this 21-day journey ends. But these stories are held at our self-image level. So the self-image is a thermostat. The self-image is a temperature gauge. The self-image is a water line. So if we think of a well, of wellness in terms of how deep we run and how much water we can hold, how much wealth, the root of the word wealth is well, how full we are of our own selves, how full we are of our own knowing of our own worth. The self-image is that waterline. So it's a kaleidoscope of all of these stories and beliefs. And from an epigenetic perspective, many of these have been passed down. And it's how the environment has shaped us. So if there was a particular story that shaped the environment of your mother and your grandmother and so on and so forth, that could be a story that is still unconscious, that is just running in the background as a program. So these are things like pain is beauty. And cleanliness is next to godliness, and something around like hygiene making us a good person or a bad person. This actually gets into racism and all sorts of equality issues that I could get into right now. For all intents and purposes, let's keep it kind of light. But when you really start uncovering and discovering some of these stories about hygiene, around beauty, around worthiness, around whiteness, you really start to see that it is time that we rewrite our beauty narrative. So today's exercise is to take a look at what stories are running. Maybe just take a journal entry and just write down, like, what has been your beauty story up until now? And I would ask you, have you ever felt beautiful? Is that a story that you have about yourself, that you are beautiful, that you have been able to experience a sense of beauty, whether that is that other people see that in you, or that you have seen it in yourself, or that you had it for a short amount of time. Let's unwind and get down on paper. What is your beauty story? And then, of course, the second level of that story will be writing a new one. And when we write our new beauty story, that is when there is an invitation to have a different definition of beauty. Because we are not running on an aesthetic definition. Uh, Aesthetics, balance, what we look like, what, all of that, the symmetry that other people see, that is aesthetics. And aesthetics are important to ourselves, right? We can use aesthetics to nurture and to feed our own sense of beauty. But when we use a standard of aesthetic that is always changing and therefore always out of our reach, we are just setting ourselves up to feel miserable and to not feel like even playing the beauty game at all. So that's one of the things that I see with my clients is sometimes they say, beauty's just not even important to me anymore. And, I'm just going to concentrate on everything else, but, the way that I look. And the challenge with that is that the way that we look and the way that we feel are actually just two sides of the same coin. And once you reclaim the vision for yourself and stop looking at yourself through the eyes of others, stop looking at yourself through the eyes of even your ancestors, stop looking at yourself through the eyes of culture, then we can start to reclaim and reset that relationship with our reflection. So beauty is the definition that we're working with in this Quantum Glow Collective. In my beauty energy universe, is beauty breaks down to I am self-light. BE is be. That literally translates to I am. Who do you be? We've already discussed be, do, have. That is the paradigm here. It's a quantum paradigm. It's a both and, it's a yes and. It's where consciousness includes everything and judges nothing. And then we have AUT. That is self. That translates directly into self. So we have I am self, AUT, and then we have the Y, putting it all together, and that is the symbol for the photon. So I discovered that a few years ago, and that's the definition of beauty that I'm working with. I am self-light, and it just so happens when you cultivate self-light, when you cultivate spiritual and cellular energy, other people can experience it as well. And it is a boon to everybody that is around you, but we're not doing it for them and we're not doing it to fit in. And we are creating our own new beauty standard. We are not working on old-fashioned beauty story standards that just are, they're outdated and they're unconscious. And I stopped playing that game 10 years ago. And I want to help you stop playing it as well, because there's such a better game to play. And that game is I am self-light. So in your members area, there is a step-by-step journal prompt to go through, and you can go through the different little journal prompts, or just do what I've told you here today on this video, which is to write down the story that you think you are working off right now. Try to look back and think of any little belief viruses that got impregnated into your field, into your body and being by a family member, by a grandmother, by a mother. This really brings up lots of stuff around the mother. And I actually didn't tap on that yet, but let's just tap on it briefly, because around the time that you were 13 or 14 years old, did your mother come and tell you anything about taking care of your skin? maintaining your skin, cultivating your skin, nourishing your skin, other words for care. What did she tell you about it? Did she set you up with a hygiene regimen? Did she tell you about products? Did she tell you things like don't touch your eyes, don't touch your eyes too much because that could create wrinkles? Did she tell you, that's, by the way, that is an old beauty story that you shouldn't touch your eye skin. You should only touch your eye skin. Like, what was that? You should only go out for your eye skin because it would cause wrinkles if you went the other way. That is just total bullshit. Um, that's another beauty story that is just wrong. But let's look back and see what your mother told you about it. I had the grandmother who was telling me things. What did your mother tell you? What stories are you running on? And then when you're done with that, write the new beauty story. Write a story around self-light. Write a story around increased cellular and spiritual radiance. Write the new story of how you feel and therefore how you look. Write a new story around how you show up in your immediate family, in your job, in the world. Write that new story and then take a moment to look at both stories and see how far you've come and see that actually the gap is starting to close even as early as day one. So I'm loving this journey for you. I'm so grateful you're taking it with me. Remember, this is only the beginning, and give yourself a lot of credit for being willing to take a look backwards and open that book and take pen to paper and write that new story. All right, I'm going to say goodbye for now, and I'm going to come over in the group and answer any questions and help you write a new story. But before I do, for everybody that's watching the replay, let's just do a quick little energetic clearing. So everything that I have talked about, all of the beauty is pain stories, any of the painful stories that I brought up from your childhood, all of the stories that I shared myself around weight, around my ears. There's more stories, and we're going to actually get into that tomorrow when we pick a body part to love. I've got a story around that as well. But everything that brought up and let down, let's just gather it all up. And together, let's dissolve and dissipate it, relax it and release it, and return it to the earth. Return it to sender with consciousness attached. And light matrix, clear, cancel, and transmute all of the pain, all of the confusion, all of the unworthiness. Let's transmute that back into pure cellular and spiritual radiance. That's better. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.